Here we go. Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining our biweekly teaching co-op. These sessions are intended to try to help faculty as they're thinking about taking their courses genuinely online, as opposed to what we did in the spring, which was emergency remote teaching. And in the last one, we had a faculty member, we did our breakout rooms, and we had a faculty member who shared her screen and walked us through parts of her Canvas course site. And it was so incredibly valuable that we thought, let's do that for the full group. And so really wanted to thank Lishan for agreeing to share his site with us. One of the things, as we're working on, I think I've mentioned previously, yes, I've mentioned it, Guide to Online Teaching and Learning. And one of the ways into it is based on skill level, instructor skill level. So beginner, which is if you did your course in Zoom in the spring, you were not teaching online, so you're a beginner. Intermediate, if you have previously taught online a course that you designed yourself. Advanced, you've previously taught online a course that you designed with an instructional or educational designer. And so the New School has that range of online courses. And I wanted to key that up because Rachel has seen Lishan's course, and it's pretty awesome. So
it's amazing. I loved your course.
Thanks. I had to help, by the way, too. So when you see it, don't freak out about some of the production stuff.
That's exactly why I just said what I just said. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Lishan.
Great. Thanks, Rita. Thanks, Rachel, for having me. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in, especially on a holiday eve, I guess. So just a quick introduction of who I am and my history at the New School. My name is Lishan Huang. I started a design practice called FUSA back in 2013. That's evolved over the years from kind of traditional graphic design, branding, web work to more service design, design thinking, and in recent years, more around corporate facilitation and team training. So a lot of what I teach in the New School context and the Parsons context is adapted from what I was doing in corporate context with clients and how I do that sort of stuff. I've been teaching at the New School since 2016, I believe, and these online courses were produced probably 2.5 or so years ago, and we've been running them ever since with some tweaks. And also for more setup here, these are continuing education courses through Open Campus, so they are shorter. One is a 5-week course, the other one is a 6-week course, and it's primarily asynchronous, meaning that the materials are pre-recorded. There's also links to third-party content or readings or other things in there, and students are prompted to have different activities and assignments that they're doing week to week, and it's done in a discussion forum kind of way so that students can see each other's work and do things that way. And we've also complemented it with some synchronous teaching, which has been a little challenging just from a scheduling perspective because of the way that some of these online Open Campus courses are advertised. Certainly mine is that they are mostly asynchronous, and so I've done weekly or once every 2-week kind of drop-in discussion sessions / office hours. And then some students will book one-on-one time, but it hasn't been hugely attended. So we're still thinking about ways to experiment with that, perhaps like advertising specific synchronous meeting times. But for now, these are primarily asynchronous courses. And also, please feel free to chime in anytime if you have a question, if you just want to type or raise your hand. Otherwise, it's just me doing some demos for a while, and then we can open it up for discussion. So let me share my screen. There we go. Okay. Hope you can see that. So as mentioned before, these are classes that are launching on Monday. So it's just teed up with my content. You won't see any student work, but you can see or imagine when I show you some of the specific assignments, like what it would look like, essentially like a feed or a discussion kind of forum. So there's two classes that I'll walk you through briefly. They're pretty similar in structure, and you can see here, this is the home page with a landing page. There's a welcome video where I basically give a short overview of the course. I worked with James Acevedo and Alon Jacobson from the Open Campus team who helped with the design of this and helping me adapt this material for online. The way that this was delivered previously was very hands-on in person, where I would facilitate activities with students or with employees in the corporate trainings in groups doing design thinking activities. So actually writing ideas on Post-its for brainstorming, or doing prototyping live using Legos or craft supplies or things like that. But translating it for the online format, the assumption is that for the most part, students are tuning in from home or wherever they are, and they're not in this sort of live group context here. And so we had to make some adjustments there, and happy to talk about that later as well, about how to adapt that in terms of just the motivation and the energy there, because in some ways it's kind of a, it's a different environment than how it would be practiced back when we could gather more in person and do these sort of things. So this is just like a visualization of the curriculum itself. So the Design Thinking Fundamentals course is the intro course in a 5-course sequence for a non-credit certificate offered by Open Campus. But we also have students who take the classes as standalone, although we also see probably like 30 to 40% of the students go all the way through with the 5 courses in the sequence. This one is 5 weeks long, but the other ones are 6 weeks long. And I think it's just because this is one of the pilot courses that the Open Campus team built in this kind of format, and then they kind of pivoted to the 6-week format, but we kept this one 5 weeks since it was already done. You can see here, if you click here, there you can see the syllabus, which I just keep as a Google Doc, so it's easy to change the dates and change things around when you repeat the class. You can just upload that and update that. There's a description here.
Can I
Yeah,
pipe
please.
in with a question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, anytime.
So you keep the syllabus as a Google Doc, but then do you change it to a PDF each time? Because I'm just concerned about the firewall in China and how our students would access that.
You know, I'm not sure because I often store a lot of the things on the New School Google Drive. And so I don't know if that is also filtered by the firewall, but yeah, you can, let's see if I click through here so you can see. Right now, it's just a link here. And you can always export it to a PDF if needed. One of the things is, I know that having the syllabi is kind of a convention and it's required by the administration, but for the most part, I keep the syllabus sparse because most of the stuff is already built in to Canvas. So really, you can see, oops, this is not scrolling, sorry, okay. It's scrolling very slowly, but you can see here, I just have like a description of the week with the theme of the week and the basic tasks and things that we're covering, as well as text-based descriptions of the course objectives, learning outcomes, and then there's some of the policy stuff in the back, right, around academic honesty and all of these other things. But all of the detailed stuff in terms of like, what are the readings, what are the videos, are built into Canvas. So the syllabus, I think, is a good way for students to get like an overview of what the course is going to be, but most of the details I've kept in Canvas. But yeah, good question about the firewall thing. It hasn't come up for me. So, oh, sorry, I got distracted. But if you come here to File in your Google Doc, you can download as a PDF or as a Word doc or whatever format you'd like here. And so you could also email that to students or just post that to Canvas if folks are having some trouble with Google. Okay. Let me go back then. Okay. So for folks who are familiar with HTML, you can basically edit your own stuff here. Again, the Open Campus team did the basics for me. And so if you go into the edit mode here, so it's a little sluggish. There is a sort of WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get kind of interface here, which is not perfect. If anybody's ever used like Dreamweaver or any of these sort of web authoring tools where you don't have to code, if you like accidentally delete the wrong thing, it can mess things up. So if you're careful, like if I needed to change this paragraph, I can just come in and type and it's okay. But any sort of heavy lifting on the formatting and stuff like that, I do suggest if you're able to work in HTML to do that here, or to get some help from folks who can. But again, you can keep it fairly simple in the format in terms of just text and embedding videos and images as you will if you're not doing these sort of 2-column things and formats. So looking at the larger structure of the class, we also have these course links. The way that I organize this, each week has a mascot from Vulture, which is about looking at pain points, to the probing puppy, which is about curiosity and empathy, and so on and so forth. And it's just a good way of grounding and helping students have this sense of like wayfinding of what is the theme of the week. And these are clickable. So you, if you're a student, you can come through and check out the week is. It's a direct link, but you can see here, this is just the modules tab. There's some basic getting started stuff that is the same for all of these online open campus classes. And then there's specific materials here like my bio, the syllabus, etc. But you can see here week by week, we have like 1.1, 1.2, etc. And there's different pieces of content in each of these. And the idea is to break it down into bite-sized pieces, right? Because this is continuing ed, we want to make sure that students can engage with this content in bite-sized pieces. And so most of the videos are pretty short. The ones where I'm lecturing can be as short as like a couple minutes, especially if it's a course overview for the week. It's just a quick overview. Other things are, you know, maybe 15 minutes max. There are a few longer.
Lishan,
Oh, yes.
I would say, I mean, you characterize this as bite-sized pieces for continuing ed. I would say for all students, bite-sized pieces, and really cleanly organized and laid out.
Yeah. And so, again, think about like what makes sense as a chapter, right? And so each chapter, sluggish internet. I have some bullet points here, and it's like, okay, you can read what I'm going to talk about. Let's just see how long this is. I won't play it over Zoom for you. But I think, yeah, so it's as short as 50 seconds, which is really just a welcome to this week. I'm essentially paraphrasing what's here in the bullet points. And there's a little bit of additional copy here. So,
Lishan, if I could interject
please.
briefly, that one of the things that we haven't really talked about is delivering materials in multiple in multiple ways. So a video, also the written text, so that a student could read the text and not play the video, or play the video and not read the text.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point there. And I think it's a good way to really hone in on like the different learning styles of different students. In stuff that I've done outside of my teaching here at the New School, I've also done like audio only stuff, and then shared the transcripts as well. So you could also think about potential learning environments if folks are just on the go, like taking a walk, and they can listen on their phone without having to be watching a video, for stuff that makes sense for audio only. Just wanted to show a variety of the different kinds of modules. So that one, you saw it had like some bullet points, some short copy, and then a welcome video. This one is a longer demo. Oops, there's some, sometimes there's some artifacts that I need to fix when I'm migrating from one canvas to another. So that's why it's embarrassingly weird here. But basically, I talk about why design thinking in this short lecture, but then I reference third-party studies, right, and citations. So that's what this link is here to. I talk about how there is an ROI for design-driven companies, and this is a link to the report. So folks who want to dig deeper and engage with the primary text can do that here. I'm going to show some different modules. Let's see, this one is similar. So I'm just going to, okay, so 1.4 then, we called it your turn in this terminology. And so this is a chance, once the students have gone through these modules, for them to introduce themselves, and I give them some instructions on how to do that, where I link to my own bio so they can learn more about me. I've also talked about that on camera in the videos. And then I ask them to basically respond to these prompts in terms of their name, what they do, and then try to get 5 reasons why they're taking this class. And that's kind of a setup for some of the additional stuff, because I'm in this first week, getting them to, first week and second week, getting them to probe into motivations, and before they can really understand how to do that sort of light ethnography with other people, to really probe themselves of why are they here, what is the kind of stuff that they want to use design thinking to address.
So if I could, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I keep interrupting you.
No, this is really helpful.
I was just in a meeting with a number of faculty and staff about supporting students as they're returning and taking classes online. And what you just said about motivation and how they're doing, we have the director of the MA TESOL, which is almost, it was originally designed as exclusively online. So she has tremendous experience working with students online. And she said, you know, getting students to think metacognitively about themselves as learners, thinking about why they're doing this, thinking about what might be impeding their engagement, thinking about what will engage them more, etc. She said it's so much more important in an online environment. So even though you're doing this because you're teaching design thinking, I think that's actually really important just in general.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think the other reflection I have on this, having also taught in the classroom as well, is that there's all of these little moments that you get with in-person teaching in a classroom that just kind of come with the territory, right? So there's those moments where a few minutes before class, right, the students are trickling in, maybe they make some small talk with their classmates or with the instructor, and there's just kind of that getting to know you time, community building and networking. And there isn't really a space for that here unless you create the space for that. So often what happens in this thread is, you know, students will introduce themselves, and then somebody will say, oh, I'm in Cincinnati. And then somebody will say, oh, I went to college there, or I'm in Cincinnati too. And so there's just these small human points of connection because it's asynchronous that I think some of the students really get something out of, right? Because even as continuing ed folks are networking and connecting in different ways. And so offering a bit of that in addition to just like the core of the content that you're delivering is helpful in these contexts. I'll go back to the home so I can show you like a variety of different modules is where I want. So there's the discussion thread. In this course, we made a choice to basically make all of the student submissions viewable by their classmates, because the idea here is that they can learn from each other, see what their classmates are doing in terms of projects. Like as a design course, it's trying to mimic in-class presentations, right, where students are showing their work and getting critiqued in that sense. Because it's continuing ed, we don't necessarily have a formalized group class critique of a specific student's work, but it is the equivalent of, I guess, of like pinning their work on the wall and then having their classmates see it, or leaving post-it notes with feedback in that sense, rather than a verbal critique. So here,
Can I interject for
yeah,
a minute?
please.
It was back to the introductions and along the
Mm-hmm.
lines of what both you shared and what Rita shared, that a couple other ideas, because I was researching this, because
Yeah.
it's so important to get students both engaged in the class, thinking metacognitively, and also to build community. There is an icebreaker suggested called childhood dream. So it's asking students on a thread to share their childhood dream and then relate it to what their current career aspirations are. And then they can like compare and contrast to see how their dreams or their goals change over time, or perhaps how they stay the same. And really thinking about that from a more kind of personal point while also sharing. So that was one that I think sounded pretty cool. And another was to do something like a Pinterest board where students include 10 pins that describe them or their personality or their interest, which I think especially for visual learners would be a pretty cool way of also introducing themselves and thinking about their interests.
That's great. Yeah, I don't do it in this course, but for other design related courses, I often also have the students post like a self-portrait, and it could be interpreted in any way, right? It could just be a cell phone selfie, but some people will like draw themselves or have something a little bit artistic in that sense. So it's also just a way for them to express themselves in a way besides writing, right? It's doing it visually. So context for this, in 1.6, the previous module, I'm basically modeling what I want to see from them in this assignment. And it's basically a photo diary of some sort of daily routine. So I basically just took pictures using my cell phone of a typical morning that I have in terms of getting up, taking a shower, having my tea, and then going about my day. And then I give them the instructions here about thinking about some experience that they have, whether it's meal prep or travel, which seems novel now, going to the doctor, doing laundry, or it could be their morning or evening routine as well. And then in the next module, here's a little bit more detail here in terms of the formatting. So basically, the students are asked to post what they do here. And so some of them will just embed the photos in the post. Others will create like a PowerPoint and upload it there. I'm not super picky about the formatting because I know this course doesn't really assume any specific technical skills. So it's really whatever works for folks. Some people even make videos. So I give them that option to do that there. So depending on what you're teaching and what the sort of technical skill requirements you have, you might be more specific about your choices, but I've found in this context that giving them the choice to, embed photos or create a PowerPoint or even do an embedded video just allows them to, for the folks who do have the technical skills to practice that, and for the folks who want to maybe stretch themselves, it gives them that opportunity, but they don't feel like they have to use one particular medium for this. So those are basically the kinds of different modules that I have. There's things where I have a video and then some short text and bullet points. There's also some standalone ones where, where it just has the readings for the week. That one is just basically text with links. Let's see. So for week 1, it would be this additional resources. Where there's some optional videos. These are more third-party videos that are available online that are additional reference, but are basically in this continuing ed context, it gives students references that they can dig deeper into, but if they don't have time or if they just want to watch it later on and bookmark it, they can do that. So it kind of gives them a way to either decide to watch these now or skip and move on to the rest of the course. The other thing that I've been thinking about and going back and forth on is how to sequence and release the course materials. And so for this course, most of the assignments are pretty bite-sized, and so I do choose a week-by-week reveal. Although I found that even though this was already advertised as 100% online, just with the recent COVID disruptions and people dealing with different things in their personal and home lives, that I started getting requests to essentially open up everything so that the students could have a little bit more agency to like go ahead if they had extra time, or for folks who felt like they were wanting to plan and manage their time going ahead, they could at least see what was coming and then work with that on their own time. And I became a little bit more flexible with that. So that's another thing I'm happy to talk about and hear what your thoughts are. Rita and Rachel, were there other specific things that you think I should show here or talk about?
I don't think so. I think we can go ahead and open it up.
Okay, great. Let me just turn off my screen share. I can always bring it back if we need it.
I would just like to say, Lee, Sean, thank you so much for this presentation. It's absolutely wonderful. I find it very inspirational for thinking about what, is going forward for what I may have, start to be doing in, the next month here or so. So I'm just impressed and so pleased to see this.
Well, thanks, Julian.
Questions? Anything you want to ask Lee Sean or others in the group? Anything you want him to show you?
Lee Sean, I came in a little late, but what are your grading criteria?
Well, so this one is an open campus continuing ed course. So it's basically pass-fail. There are specific criteria for each assignment, but for the most part, it's like if they do it and it looks like they made an effort, it's pass. And then there's a policy that's written in the syllabus that basically if they complete 85% of the assignments, then they'll get a pass for this pass-fail class.
And the assignments are projects or pieces
They're
of writing,
projects or they were specific. So I just showed week 1 in detail. You saw like one was just self-introduction. The other one was the main assignment for week 1 was essentially the journaling. So they're taking a photo diary or some sort of storyboard of one of their routines. It builds up over time. So week by week, they're working on one final project that they turn in on week 5, but I break it down so they have intermediate deliverables. So there's like some research I have them do where they talk to a user, I have them then write up a draft of their creative brief, and then they basically have a presentation of their prototype by the end of it. There's also kind of a short reflection written assignment that I ask them to write for the final week as well.
We have a very important question in the chat. Do you have an idea of how many hours on average each student spends on the course?
Ooh.
This is a really, really, really important question because I think faculty are going to be inclined to put as much content in the course as they can. And if you figure that students are taking probably multiple classes and juggling, one faculty member says you have to post twice, another faculty member says you have to respond to 3 people's comments, one says you have to post on Wednesday, another says you have to post on Friday. It's going to be so complicated for them.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not sure I remember. What I do remember in terms of the process is that I had this outline and I had multiple meetings with Elon and with James about this. And we were really talking about how it doesn't necessarily translate one-to-one, right? So in in-person teaching, we're really thinking and measuring in like the contact hours of like literally, you know, is it a hour class, a 2-hour class? But here, I'm not replacing an hour-long class with like an hour worth of video content, right? Which is something to take into account, is that probably an hour-long class, you're not literally lecturing for that whole hour, right? There's other things that you're doing, and attention spans are also different when it's fully screen-based. And so I don't remember. They had some sort of metric that we were using and then just kind of applying that to each module, right? So if there's a reading, we could look at the page count or the word count and it roughly mapped to something. You know, my videos, you could obviously see the minute count, and then I think it added up roughly to, I don't know, it's about like 5 hours a week for something like that. But I think the students spend like between 5 and 10. I try to make it as accessible as possible, but like some people go all out. I've seen some prototypes where people have gone all out with stuff, or like brought their family and their kids into it as well, and edited videos and things like that. And oftentimes those are students who are working on career transition or working on their portfolios. And so they take the prompts from the class, but really run with it, but it's not absolutely necessary to pass.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit, you mentioned it briefly, you mentioned that you started with an outline, how the process of designing the course.
Yeah. So for me, I guess with Alon and James, it was this, I basically talked them through what the in-person thing looked like, and some of the learning goals for each of the activities that we used to do in person and in kind of groups. And then we started basically kind of breaking it down into like, how do you adapt this to something that somebody could do by themselves at home? One of the trickiest parts of that was with the ideation and prototyping phase, where before, when I was doing it in person, you would have a group to do something like that, and it would be like a time-bounded thing, right? You want to do a super rapid prototype in 20 minutes, but you have 2 teammates with you doing this. What we decided to do, because the students are doing these assignments on their own, is for those videos, I actually like enlisted some like stand-in students essentially, and we did a demo. So I showed them, okay, this is a group ideation session and like a do's and don'ts. And so there's more of like a skit kind of thing where we enlisted some folks to stand in as the students, so they could actually see that rather than me kind of talking about it, even if they can't replicate it at home, but they could at least see, okay, how would they replicate it with their teams when they apply this in the real world? Otherwise, yeah, in terms of the planning, thinking about like what each module type is, right? Whether it's a mini lecture video or it's a reading, It's a third party kind of reference, like those YouTube videos, and then a your turn or like an assignment, whether it's like a mini assignment like the self-introduction or something more involved. And kind of thinking about the sequence, right? The students can see the order of everything, and like theoretically you could skip around based on what you're interested in, but it's helpful to have like a logical order, right? Of like, okay, read this thing first, and then watch this video, and then have the your turn kind of thing. And so really thinking about like, what is the order that you want somebody to go through this, even if they're not doing it in like one session sitting down. I hope that was clear.
Do you have a lot of students reach out to you for support or for one-on-one meetings?
It's not a lot, because this is continuing ed and advertised as an online class. Like I would say like I get like only like 1, 2, maybe 3 a semester who request it. So it's not a volume that makes it hard to do. I've also tried to do like a Friday afternoon drop-in office hours kind of thing, but I was finding that nobody was really coming, or I would get like 1, maybe 2 students. And so for me, I was just like, I'd rather just kind of reclaim my time and make it by appointment. I also, this is a plug, but I use one of those virtual scheduling services. So it does cut down on some of the email back and forth, because the virtual assistant can see my calendar and basically like deal with some of that.
Rita, I jumped in late, but I'd like to point out that on Canvas, you can use the calendar, schedule what I call open sessions with Zoom links, and populate it every half hour. My seminar partner, Amy, showed me how to do this, and it was extremely important and helpful teaching this June.
So Charlotte, actually, can I follow up with that? So did
Yeah.
students basically sign themselves up for those specific slots?
Yes. Yes. It's, you can, it's pretty self-explanatory or fairly intuitive to set it up in Calendar and clicking on things. It's a little tricky what to click on and how to populate it every half hour. My friend Stacy Seiler says she just Googles, what she needs to know in Canvas, and a video comes up on how to do it. My seminar partner, Amy Stoker, showed me, and I don't feel like prepared to show it right now to everybody. I'm kind of in the middle of grading, and I'm in Virginia at my family's house.
Yeah, it's good to know that there's options. I'm also seeing that John typed in the chat that sign-up calendars are also available in your New School Google Calendar. So that could
and
work.
Eileen said Canvas allows you to schedule office hours according to any size time slots, and students can sign.
Yeah, what I love.
But being able to link to the Zoom, that's great.
Yes, and again, Rita, your point about clarity and simplicity, what I love about using the calendar in Canvas, it's right there. It's all of a piece. And yeah, linking the Zoom sessions, it's very easy.
Cool. Any other questions or things that people want to talk about?
Now's your opportunity.
I want to invite folks to perhaps share out with the group if they're struggling to think about how to adapt a certain, week of their course, a certain module, a certain activity that worked really well in person, but now has to be online. Maybe put that out and we could walk through it, talk through it.
Could I ask something, Rachel? So PJ and I had a conversation last week because I had asked, I teach writing courses in the English Language Studies Center, and I used to teach them in the writing program, like academic writing. So there's a writing assignment every week, and they what's the word I want? They comment on they respond to each other's piece of writing with usually 3 questions, and then but they have, in the classroom, each student has brought hard copies, so everybody can see the copy, and the writer reads it out loud, and then the group uses these questions to respond to it. And I couldn't imagine how to do it online. So PJ and I came up with the idea, well, if I put them into breakout groups, and here's the question, can they share a document in their breakout group of 3 students? That's my question. Because if they can, then that would simulate all 3 students can see the draft, they can listen to the writer read it out loud, and then all 3 students can contribute to the discussion on the criteria I give them. Does that everybody understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, so my first thought, Margaret, would be that they write in a Google Doc and they can share their screen, but they can also share the Google Doc with the 2 people in the breakout, and they could actually all be on the document together.
So is Google Doc the only way to do it? They couldn't have a Word doc that they somehow bring up in a share screen?
You could, whatever is on your screen, you can share that window. So yes, it could be a Word document. It could be a PDF.
Okay.
And then they share their screen, and as they scroll, the students can be commenting.
Okay, so the question was, they can, in a breakout group, they can share a document.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That solves a big problem for me.
There are also annotation tools that can be helpful, and whether it's just through sharing the whiteboard on Zoom, if you're using Zoom, but there's also ways to, say, annotate a reading, and folks can put notes in that way. So you can just Google like the best online annotation tools.
I just want to point out that Eileen has a link to a how-to for the calendar that we were talking about before.
I see this question now from Tamar about how did I produce the videos for my course. So I had help. So the Open Campus team helped with that. There's an on-campus production company run by students that helped with that, and they had the backdrop and all of those things. Now, since we're in a different situation, well, you can see now, like this backdrop is actually just painted pieces of canvas that are hiding the clutter of my shelves that I like found, or actually a former roommate left these behind when he suddenly moved out of town, and was like, okay, I'm gonna repurpose these things. And I think I've gotten better at producing my own video stuff since the COVID shutdown, since I've been doing webinars and online teaching and all sorts of other things. I wish I could show you what I'm seeing right now, but I have like basically a cheap ring light in front of me. So that's why my lighting is relatively even. There's basically like a 3-point light thing going on with LEDs. But for the most part, I think viewers tolerate bad video better than they tolerate bad audio. So you can see here, I've got like a fancy USB mic and stuff like that, but if you don't have one of those, even using like one of these, right, that has a headset in there, that audio quality is better than just the mic that's built into your computer, or using like Bluetooth. So yeah, think about using cords, and good lighting helps a lot, even if you're just using your regular webcam. And then focus mostly on the audio, I think, is the differentiator. If you're like slightly, if your light isn't perfect, or you're a little bit grainy, like I think that's more okay, especially these days, than audio that's hard to understand.
Additionally, I want to add to that that Loom is a recording app or program that has been recommended. It was yesterday, was it another Parsons faculty who was giving a workshop that I believe was recorded, so we could share it out with the group, about both using Canvas and then integrating Loom videos with it, and how you can use the embed code to really just make it work seamlessly in Canvas. And it was really great because it could both record you, but it could also record your screen, and you could kind of work with it pretty easily in terms of creating the kind of video that you're looking for.
And I think Loom is free for educational users. So if you sign up using your New School account, which is what I did, you get a free pro version.
It's great to know. Also want to call attention to the post from Maya about a collaborative annotation tool. How do you spell Loom? L-O-O-M?
Yes. It's just loom.com, Loom.com.
So speaking of videos, I have a question. As early in the presentation, when Lishan was sharing his screen, I minimized the videos so that I didn't see anybody. And it meant that I could see mostly the full screen except for the little remnant that was left from minimizing the videos. I'm curious, and then I decided that I wanted to see Lishan speaking. And so I made it speaker view so that I could see the thumbnail of Lishan while seeing his screen. I'm curious to know, because there's been some debate about whether it's better if you're showing if you're videoing yourself with a screen share via Zoom so that they can watch it later. Is it better to have the speaker thumbnail, or is it better to hide the speaker thumbnail? And I'm curious to know what you all did. Did you hide the video, or did you watch the video? And then did you pay attention to the speaker and not to what was on the screen?
I would say I went back and forth. There were key moments where I turned to Lishan and wanted to actually grasp exactly what he was saying. But mostly I was looking at the video. And actually in the few videos I did in the spring, I did something similar where I expanded. I actually recorded myself with me in the corner of the video. And then when I really wanted them to pay attention to me, I blew myself up. And when I really wanted them to pay attention to what was on the screen, I eliminated myself. So it was this kind of dynamic of change that I think was easier than just looking at a slide.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that helps a lot with attention span because it gives some variation.
Yes, I mean, I'm just going to chime in here. I mean, from doing, it's similar to looking into multimedia and cognitive loads. And so just from that alone, having the slides only and audio is actually seen as a very effective way to keep focus. And sometimes having, actually the stream of the visual, the talking head, is an additional, channel that students pay attention to. And so it is actually, sort of taking off some of their brain power that could be focused on purely looking into what is presented, especially when there's visuals and walking and talking people through those visuals. So just as a best practice, I personally do practice that very much. I think it is if you have a visual, you have a screen, once you've had an opportunity to establish a little bit more of a presence through the conversations. Initially, I wouldn't say don't ever turn off your video, but I think that in some moments throughout the Zoom session, especially if you're running a 50 or 75 minute sessions and you know, obviously there's group work and other opportunities, but it's okay, you know, if you turn off your video in certain moments and just focus on the presentation materials, whatever they be. I'm also going to post an article which just came yesterday. When it's okay to turn your video off during, which is Zoom meetings, but I just literally read this yesterday, and you can get a few nuggets there around, you know, practices in general.
Thanks for that, Maya.